Oh, yes, children can go to children's church now. Your bulletin says that we're going to be talking about the church at Sardis from Revelation this Sunday, but I didn't really have time after Micah contacted me to do it justice, so I have pulled an old sermon out of my collection, and hopefully it will be of help to you. We are living in difficult times. Does everybody agree with that statement? Sometimes things get so difficult we wonder if we're going to get through. And we need something like what happens in the following silly poem. Two frogs. This sounds rather echoey. Is that okay? Anyways, two frogs fell into a can of cream, or so I've heard it told. The sides of the can were shiny and steep. The cream was deep and cold. "Oh, what's the use?" croaked number one. "'Tis fate, no help's around. Goodbye, my friend, goodbye, sad world." And weeping still, he drowned. But number two, of sterner stuff, dog paddled in surprise, the while he wiped his creamy face and dried his creamy eyes. "I'll swim a while at least," he said, or so I've heard he said. "It really wouldn't help the world if one more frog were dead." An hour or two he kicked and swam. Not once he stopped to mutter, but kicked and swam and kicked, then hopped out via butter. Perseverance is something we all need. The New Testament uses the word for perseverance, or sometimes translated patience, 32 times. It's an important quality. It's one of those things we're told to strive for in several different passages, and it's commended in the churches of Ephesus, Thyatira, and Philadelphia that we've been seeing in Revelation. James points out that it is precisely difficult times that produce perseverance. James chapter 1, verses 2 and 3. "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance." Now, notice in that passage that perseverance has something to work with. Faith. The testing of your faith produces perseverance. And it's faith I want to talk about this morning. It's so important that 2 Corinthians 5 verse 7 says, "We live by faith, not by sight." We live by faith, not by sight. But what is faith? What do you do when you have faith? Well, there are two aspects to faith: the object of your faith and the degree or amount of your faith. And while both are important, the object of your faith is much more important. If you have just a little bit of faith in your parachute when you jump out of the plane, you pull that parachute and you'll come floating down to the ground. You have a strong faith in your umbrella and jump out of the plane. Different result. I heard a comedian a while back talk about his growing up. He was in a family, I think, of 8 or 9 boys. And the night before, they'd watched Mary Poppins, in which you have a famous scene where she comes down out of the sky floating with an umbrella. Their father was sitting at the breakfast table looking out the window when suddenly one of the boys flashed past the window carrying an umbrella, crashed into the ground. A few seconds later, another one followed, also carrying an umbrella, and then a third with no umbrella. He dashed out to see them. Fortunately, none of them were seriously hurt. And he asked the second one, "You saw what happened to the first boy. Why did you do it too?" "Well, I thought he was doing it wrong." And then asked the third one, "And you saw your two brothers crash to the ground. Why did you jump?" And he responded, "Well, like the umbrella helped them." It doesn't matter how much faith you have in something if that something you have faith in is not going to carry you. And if you have faith in anything other than Jesus Christ for your salvation, for your hope of heaven, you are looking at the wrong object of your faith. Sometimes it has to be faith in a person. We have faith in Jesus Christ. When asked if she understood the theory of relativity, Mrs. Einstein replied, "No, but I know Albert, and he can be trusted." Sometimes we don't understand things, but if we know God, he can be trusted. So the object of our faith is most crucial, but the degree of faith is important. So today I want to ask you to do a little self-check. On the car of your faith, is the tank full? Do the tires have good pressure? Does it have enough clean oil, etc.? Because faith is so vital. Hebrews 11:6 tells us, without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. And without that faith, Romans 14:23 says, "But the man who has doubts is condemned if he eats, because his eating is not from faith, and everything that does not come from faith is sin." Faith is vital. And I want to talk about 6 different ways that faith works. And to sum it up, I have this sentence: faith means accepting that God's viewpoint is more reliable than yours and acting on it. It's not just about belief, it's about what you do as a result of that belief that shows your belief. There was a story of a world-famous tightrope walker who had a tightrope strung across the Niagara Falls. He climbed up on the rope, he walked over to the other side and came back. Then he picked up a wheelbarrow, set that on the rope, walked over to the other side, and then walked back. He asked the people who were watching, who had been amazed by this performance, "Do you think I could carry a person in the wheelbarrow back and forth?" And everybody said, "Oh, yeah." "Is any of you willing to get in the wheelbarrow?" No. Faith means you have to do something with it, or it's not real faith. You have to get in the wheelbarrow to prove your faith. So, 6 things about faith. Number 1, faith is believing when you don't see it. Believing when you don't see it. Hebrews 11:1-3. Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. Faith is being certain of what we do not see. 2 Corinthians 4:18 adds, "So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." When we fix our eyes on the things of the world, you're focusing on something that is temporary. When you focus on God, you're focusing your faith on something that will last forever. And unless you are in open sin or rebellion against God or active disobedience, God is at work in your life even if you don't see it. The town was suffering through a drought. Crop failures loomed, perhaps starvation. So everybody was asked to come together to pray for rain. Most people in the town came to pray. but only one of them had enough faith to bring an umbrella. When you pray, do you know that God will hear you? Even if you don't see it happening, do you trust him? And God is at work in the world too. When we look at the news, we don't see anything about what God is doing. It's just skipped. And sometimes really big things are happening. A few years ago, the city of Cali in Colombia was renowned for the Cali cartel, a group of 7 men who had formed what was perhaps the most organized criminal enterprise in history. They controlled the town of Cali and the surrounding area. Anybody that couldn't be bribed was killed. It was a horrible place. Finally, the pastors of the town got together to pray. They prayed in the stadium in the town that seats about 27,000 people, and they hoped they'd have a few thousand people joining them. They had 30,000. 30,000 people came to pray. Pray for God to fight the unseen spiritual masters of their city. Well, the first outcome of this prayer meeting was something unprecedented. The following day, there were no murders in Cali. And at that time, they had an average of 80 murders per day, the highest death rate or murder rate in the world by far. 80 per day. I mean, that's crazy. But after that prayer meeting, there were no murders that day. In the next 4 months, they fired 900 police officers who were linked with the Cali cartel. And some people then had visions in which they saw angels arresting the leaders of the cartel, and that happened. 3 months after these dreams had been seen, Colombian authorities had captured all 7 of the cartel leaders. The believers in Cali decided to hold a second all-night prayer meeting. And they just happened. The Colombian authorities launched an anti-corruption investigation, not only within the city government of Cali, but even up to the office of the nation's president. Since that time, things in Cali have gone much better. The mayor of Cali said, "This city needs Jesus Christ to bring peace." The city authorities provided sound systems and platforms for 22 current evangelism crusades with 40 different national and international speakers. Crime dropped. The incidence of AIDS, which had been the highest in Latin America, dropped. The churches in Cali grew tremendously. There was a price for it, though. Quite a few of those pastors who had started this whole thing were killed. But God was at work. He can do big things, even when you say, nothing can change this. It's too powerful. Sin is controlling this. The Cali cartel, you even breathed a word of dissent against them, bang, you're dead. But God can still work. And not only is he working in the past, he's also working right now in Africa. The Awana program in Africa, back in July of 1922, was reaching a little over 500,000 children across Africa. They are now reaching about 22, sorry. Numbers are small on the paper here. Back in 22, a little over 500,000. They are now reaching 3.5 million children and still more. What happened? Some people in one of the towns of their area decided to try having Awana in the school. They put it in the school, and it had tremendous results. Absenteeism disappeared. Discipline problems disappeared. Grades went up. And a government official noticed this and came and saw the results of this and talked with the people who had done it and said, we want you to do the same thing for 700 schools in our country. And if that works, we're going to do it across the whole country, in every school, have an Awana program that will teach kids about the Bible. Wow. Well, that same thing has happened in country after country. They see what's happening in their neighboring country that puts Awana in the schools, and they want it also. So they're now up to 3.5 million, and it's still going. God is at work in big ways, but that's something you're never going to hear in the news. So even when you don't see it, God is at work. Believe him, because he will do it. So faith is believing when you don't see it. Faith is obeying when you don't understand it. We have an example of that in John 13, verses 6 through 8. Jesus came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus replied, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. No, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. And then Peter gave in. But initially, he was not willing to obey what Jesus was asking because he didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to him. And sometimes we read something in the Bible, or we hear the still small voice of the Holy Spirit, and our response is, why in the world do you want me to do that, God? Story is told of a man who slipped over the edge of a cliff. On his way down, he grabbed a branch of a small tree growing from the side of the cliff. And he cried out, help! Is anyone up there? He heard a voice. Yes, I'm here. Who is that? The Lord. Lord, help me. Do you trust me? I trust you completely, Lord. Good. Let go of the branch. What? I said, let go of the branch. Is anyone else up there? Do we obey even when we don't understand it? Even when it doesn't make sense? Faith is obeying when you don't understand it. And sometimes that has consequences when we don't do that. In Luke chapter 1, verses 18 to 20, Zechariah asked the angel. The angel had just told him his wife, who was pretty old as he was going to have a baby, a special baby, John the Baptist. Zechariah asked the angel, how can I be sure of this? I'm an old man and my wife is well along in years. The angel answered, I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and to tell you this good news. And now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which will come true at their proper time. Poor Zechariah could have spared himself 9 months of not being able to talk if he had just obeyed even when he didn't understand how it would be possible. So faith is obeying when you don't understand it. Faith is also giving when you don't have it. Luke 21, verses 1 to 4. As he looked up, Jesus saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. I tell you the truth, he said. This poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. Mother Teresa commented about that. If you give what you don't need, it isn't giving. Faith is giving when you don't have it. And I'm not primarily talking about money here. Yes, money is part of this. But what I'm thinking more of in terms of time, energy, your spiritual gifts, especially giving up your own desires to serve others. An example of this is in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 1 to 5. And now, brothers, we want you to know about the grace that God has given the Macedonian churches. Out of the most severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. They didn't have a lot. For I testify that they gave as much as they were able and even beyond their ability. Entirely on their own, they urgently pleaded with us for the privilege of sharing in this service to the saints. And they did not do as we expected, but they gave themselves first to the Lord and then to us in keeping with God's will. They not only gave money to help out their brothers and sisters who were having troubles in Jerusalem, they also gave themselves. Story is told of a young boy sitting in church watching as the offering plate was being passed. He wanted to put something in, reached into his pocket, nothing there. Plate was passed down the row, came to him. So he did all he could do. He put the plate on the ground and he stepped into it. He was giving himself because that's what he had. All he had. Faith is giving when you don't have it. And sometimes that giving needs to come first before other things. A missionary had been teaching tithing to his church. One morning, a young Christian came to the missionary's door with a fishing pole in one hand and a fish in the other. He said, "Here's my tithe." The missionary asked him where the rest of his fish were, and the man replied, "Oh, they're in the river. I just wanted to bring God his first." There's a good example for us. Give when you don't have it. Jim Elliot, the missionary, said, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." Faith is giving when you don't have it. Faith is persisting when you don't feel like it. Mark chapter 14, 32 to 37. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. "Stay here and keep watch." Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that, if possible, the hour might pass from him. "Abba, Father," he said, "everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me." He knew what was coming. And he wasn't sure he could go through with it. He didn't feel like it. I don't think there are very many people who feel like going to the cross. But then he continued, "Yet not what I will, but what you will." He was going to persist even though he didn't feel like it. The disciples, on the other hand, then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Simon," he said to Peter, "are you asleep? Could you not keep watch for 1 hour?" "No, Lord, I need my beauty rest." Faith is persisting when you don't feel like it. A Persian king needed a faithful servant, and he had 2 candidates. He offered both a fixed sum to do a job for him, and then told them to go out to the well, draw water out of the well with the bucket, and pour it into a basket that he gave them, a wicker basket. And then he promised to come back in the evening to inspect their work. So, let the bucket down into the well, bring up some water, pour it into the basket. What happens? The water goes right through, drains out. They did that twice, and then one of them said, "What's the point of this useless work? As soon as the water goes in the basket, it runs out again. I'm not going to do such a stupid job," and left. The other had replied, "But we are being paid to do this, and the use is for the king to decide, not us." He continued with the work until the well was drained and he was pulling up mud from the bottom. And he poured that last bit of muddy water into the basket. And then noticed something shiny. a diamond ring. Then he understood why the king had wanted him to do that. Somewhere in that well, he had dropped that diamond ring, and he knew that if he just brought up buckets of water and emptied them, the ring might get lost. But if he poured the water into that basket, it would catch the ring, and all the water would disappear. So sometimes God tells us to do something, and we just don't feel like it. But if we'll do it, if we persist with our faith, then can come rewards. So faith is persisting when you don't feel like it. Faith is also thanksgiving before you receive it. John chapter 11, verses 41 and 42. Jesus standing before the tomb of Lazarus. They took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." Jesus already knew what God the Father was going to do, but he wanted everybody to see that he gave thanks even before it happened. Two girls comparing their money. One of them had 5 pennies. The other had 10. The one with 10 said to the one with 5, "I've got more than you." And the other replied, "Yes, but my daddy promised me a nickel tonight, so I have 10. She trusted in her dad, and so she was in effect thanking him for what he had promised before she got it. There's a man named George Mueller, a German man who moved to England and started an orphanage. It had as many as 1,000 orphans at a time. He ran that orphanage for many, many years on faith because he had no financial backing, no income. He had to pray and ask God to provide. And this story happened more than once. They had no food for breakfast. They gathered all the orphans and the staff together, and they thanked God for their food. As soon as they finished praying, there's a milkman. His truck is broken down. The milk is all going to spoil. Can you use it? Yes. They have milk. A baker comes next. They open the door to him and he says, "I just felt that I had to make bread and bring it to you this morning. So here it is." They thanked before they received it. And sometimes we need to thank God in advance for what he is going to do in and through us. Because faith is thanking before you receive it. And finally, faith is trusting if you don't receive it. Hebrews 11:36-39. The hall of faith. Some faced jeers and flogging, while still others were chained and put in prison. They were stoned. They were sawed in two. They were put to death by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and holes in the ground. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised. Faith is trusting if you don't receive it. Daniel chapter 3, verses 16-18. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The king has created this giant idol of himself, commanding everybody to worship. These three refuse. And they tell him, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it. And he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. God can save us, but he might choose not to. We're going to trust him anyways." And I love what Job had to say in all of his difficulties. Though he slay me, yet I will hope in him. Is your faith strong enough that you'll keep on trusting God, even if you don't receive what you ask for, and sometimes if you get something you didn't ask for? Because faith is trusting if you don't receive it. There's an interesting little prayer supposedly written by a Confederate soldier during the Civil War. I asked God for strength that I might achieve. I was made weak that I might learn humbly to obey. I asked for health that I might do greater things. I was given infirmity that I might do better things. I asked for riches that I might be happy. I was given poverty that I might be wise. I asked for power that I might have the praise of men. I was given weakness that I might feel the need of God. I asked for all things that I might enjoy life. I was given life that I might enjoy all things. I got nothing that I asked for, but everything I had hoped for. Almost despite myself, my unspoken prayers were answered. I am among all men most richly blessed. Faith is trusting if you don't receive it. It's thanking before you receive it. It's persisting when you don't feel like it. It's believing when you don't see it. It's obeying when you don't understand it. Giving when you don't have it. So how is your faith today? Is it focused on the right person? Is it focused on Jesus Christ? Because he is our only hope for salvation. He is our only hope for heaven. And is your faith strong enough to carry you through the difficulties of life, the trials, the hardships? Is your faith getting stronger or is it flickering out? Are you believing when you don't see it, obeying when you don't understand it, giving when you don't have it, persisting when you don't feel like it, thanking before you receive it, trusting if you don't receive it? Are you accepting that God knows best and then acting on that? Will your persistent faith receive God's statement when you reach heaven? Well done, good and faithful servant. Let's pray. Father, I think all of us need to be like the man Jesus spoke to who said, Lord, I believe, please help my unbelief. Because, Lord, we trust, but we need help with faith. Strengthen our faith, even knowing that that could mean difficulties that will test that faith. Help us to go stronger in our faith because we are growing closer to you. We ask this in Jesus' name.